I'd like to give you some background on where we have come in terms of like the sophistication of the tools that we have to do statistical calculations. Okay, we really started pretty primitively. When I took this course as an undergraduate in 1968, I believe, this is pretty much the machine that I use, is that adding and subtracting, mechanical calculator. Most of these, and this one, in fact, was used a little electronic motor. Back in those days, we used slide rules to do calculations involving multiplication and squares and square roots and so on and so forth. Eventually, the first of the electronic calculators started to show up, but most work in those days was done with calculators and pen and paper. What you see here is literally a paper ledger, the same way that an accountant might use one back in those days. They'd have these big wide sheets of yellow papers with columns and rows where they would enter debits and credits and so on and so forth, and calculate long rows of columns. And if they made a mistake, they'd have to go back and recalculate all of their work. On the right-hand side, you see that the analogous software on a computer is spreadsheet software like Excel and so on and so forth. The first of these programs is called VisiCalc, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But pretty quickly, these spreadsheet programs supplanted these ledgers because they were just so much more efficient, so much more utilitarian. First of these programs to be present on microcomputers so that they could be used by businesses was a piece of software that ran on the Apple II computer called VisiCalc. In fact, a lot of people credited it with the early success of the Apple II computer in a crowded field of competitors that made microcomputers around the same time. So spreadsheets consist of rows and columns on a screen where you can input various kinds of information. We're going to get to that in a little bit in terms of our exercises. You can put in three kinds of information: text information, labels basically, numeric information, numbers. They could be dollars and cents, they could be integers, they could be decimal numbers, and so on and so forth. Or you can embed formulas or calculations into those cells as well. Okay, and that gives us a lot of the facilities that we work with to do calculations with spreadsheets. Another type of program that helps us work with a lot of data are called database programs. Those are programs that are specifically designed for handling, for being able to search through, for being able to organize large quantities of data. Okay, now we're not going to be working with database programs very much in this course. Our data needs are going to be somewhat reduced, but they certainly still play a large they certainly have a large place in dealing with large amounts of data that are in financial and genomic and other kinds of research these days. Okay, so and finally, SPSS, or statistical software, vertical software that's specifically made for doing statistical analyses, such as SPSS, are available to us, that are designed exactly for what we need to do descriptive statistics, to produce graphics that involve summaries of statistics, and so on and so forth. Okay, and we're going to be working with SPSS and some exercises that are part of this week's coursework.